Bitcoin explodes to new highs as talk of a strategic Bitcoin reserve returns, bringing massive inflows. Short-term vols pick up on the break of 80k and trigger some profit-taking in November calls. And Ethereum vol comes alive again as it realizes 20 points over Bitcoin and reminds investors what it can do. All this and more in this week's Crypto Options Unplugged. Welcome back to Crypto Options Unplugged, everyone. I'm Imran from Options Insight. I've got my man Dave from FRNT. And today's special guest is Olaf Ammermann, Managing Director at Islington Consultants. How you doing? Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, good to have you on.
It's a good week to be here.
Great week to be here.
90k we hit last night.
I know. And I couldn't sleep last night. I was like back to checking the phone every hour.
I have to say, before we get started, you can have your victory lap because you have been sitting here pretty much all year banging the drum about this and saying, don't overcomplicate it, just be long. You know, it's all setting up for this. And mate, you've been proven right.
It has played out quite nicely. It's not always been easy, but crypto never is. And you know, I'd echo that sentiment here still though. It's like, let's not overcomplicate this. Like the macro is still, you know, setting up, you know, for this kind of, I mean, we've been in a bull market in a way, but for the next leg, and that kind of exponential stage of it, you know, liquidity is picking up. We've got this global easing cycle still going on. China are throwing the kitchen sink at it. So the macro is still great. We're still kind of in the early stages of that. And then we've just had this added kicker with the whole election and what that's going to mean going forward. So, you know, it's going to be, it won't be a straight line up, but like it's felt that way over the last few days. You know, there's going to be some pullbacks. That's the nature of crypto and the volatility around crypto. But yeah, I don't certainly into year end. I think we spoke about last week or the week before. The liquidity looks pretty good going into like Q2 of next year. So I think you ride this now like into Q2 of next year, and yeah, don't overcomplicate it. Bitcoin's going up, crypto's going up, Nasdaq's going up. Yeah, this is the time where you make your money.
Nice. So Olaf, tell us. So what do you guys do then over at Islington?
Yeah, we my background is from Tradfi. I used to be an option trader in sell-side banks over here in London. Spent a lot of time in Canada as well. And I got into the whole crypto or digital asset space in like 2015, 2016. And
nice and early.
Well, early enough, I'd say. Definitely different times, definitely through a few cycles now. And it's mostly started off with helping fintechs and crypto native firms just to get set up, get organized. I helped clients set up like option trading, infrastructure, and then help implement their trading strategies. Over the time, I've also helped like more traditional firms to get into the space. So like asset managers, smaller asset managers, hedge fund managers to just get into crypto. It's a lot of education in there just to explain how this works, how to approach it from a technology point of view. Also a lot of regulatory questions always. Crypto is always, at least when it relates to Tradfi, is always regulatory. And in the meantime, we trade ourselves as well. Deribit, other platforms, option strategies.
Primarily options you trade?
Yes, I come from the vol trading background, and so that's and crypto to me it's just a space that makes it easy to access and quite easy for smaller players to really implement trading strategies, which is still a bit difficult in Tradfi.
Right.
We do all sorts of things. I mean, I've been a court expert on things before and stuff like that. But I mean, this space is just so broad in what comes in that really attracted me to it, and I've never looked back.
So it's not often we get a guest on the show who's got your vantage point where you do trade options. So you've got a market lens and you're seeing the swings. You're trying to actually kind of trade around, but also you have some knowledge of the regulatory landscape, right? In-depth knowledge, because you're actually helping firms kind of come into the space. So would you say this move we've seen in the likes of alts and ETH in particular is warranted given the sort of regulatory moves we're likely to see now that the result of the election is known?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a while now, even though price-wise we've already been in a bull market for a while now, but in reality, from the sentiment of the market and everything, we actually haven't been in a proper bull market. And I think the Trump election has been now kind of like a bit of a kickoff to everybody who was kind of sitting on the fence, waiting for the next kind of longer cycle to say, okay, now we're there. I think it was always just a kind of a question when and how. And I think Trump, or this election, I'm not even sure that Trump itself is really such an important factor in that, but the election now has kind of, in my view, opened the gates a bit more. And now I think we're in a longer positive trend. And I think what in the last cycle, when people said, oh, it's like institutional adoption, I think in this now it's actually true institutional adoption, where really big players come in, where now we're even less in the question, is this here to stay? Okay, it's definitely here to stay. It's just how, and how can we get exposure? How is it going to develop? But I don't think anyone really questions anymore if Bitcoin's still around in 10 years.
Yeah, well, like if you're going to see people like Gensler go and be replaced by a pro-crypto person, right?
Yes.
That's huge. I mean, Coinbase stock's up 70% in a week, probably for that reason alone, right?
Absolutely. I think the US is still a bit in a regulatory kind of dilemma. I don't think they've really figured out where it's going. I think even the diversity of regulators and the question, where things are going is still open. And I think there's a disadvantage there towards Europe, for example, but also towards Asia. But it's certainly positive for sure. It's because before it was really kind of like regulate by going to the courts, right? And I think that's going to stop, and I think that's very positive.
Nice.
It's funny as well, because when I think of when I first came into this space, and I used to sort of like jokes with people that like Bitcoin is either going to zero or it's like going to some ridiculous levels that's hard to think about. But the big question was always like, what will governments do to get in the way of it?
That was always the worry.
Yeah, and I wrote in my newsletter over the weekend in connecting the dots. The last cycle, I was still there questioning, will the US ban it? Like, will other major countries and economies try and ban it in some way? It's unbelievable. And I don't think even I've kind of thought, as somebody who's super bullish this space, like the impact, it's unbelievable that now that's, like you say, has been taken off the table, right? This isn't going away. But we've kind of known that. But now the thing I'm contemplating, are the US going to add it as a strategic reserve asset?
Well, that's the noises
and that's what they're saying. But like this feels now a very real possibility. Like I'd say I put quite a high delta on it now.
It's all of this is making Saylor look like just the biggest genius on the planet. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's up $10 billion on the trade so far, right? Apparently.
Yeah.
Maybe more. I think that was last print, but we've probably rallied a lot since then.
And he bought what, 2 billion?
I mean, he's been borrowing money and buying Bitcoin for years now. Yeah. Right.
But he gets it right, and he gets
he gets the reason why this is the best, the pristine collateral, the best asset out there, right?
Yeah. And that's why I've been quite relaxed over the time. Don't get me wrong, the pullbacks feel uncomfortable, but
not when you got hedges on though, mate.
No, not when you got the hedges on. No, exactly, and that's what they're there
Which you never do, but that's fine.
But that's going to happen now more, right? I think vol is going to increase overall. Vol is going to increase.
Yeah.
Especially if like ETH is going towards all-time highs. I think naturally there is just going to be a lot more.
What's the all-time high on ETH? It's like 4,400.
I think it's 4,800, something like that.
Is it?
Yeah, it's about.
It's a long way.
We're still a long way away. And a couple of years ago, ETH was trading at like 6% of a Bitcoin, and people are talking about, is it going to go to 10? And now we're just shy of 4, right? So I think it has quite a bit of catching up.
So in terms of market cap, it's just so much smaller.
In terms of price percentage, like the ETH Bitcoin.
The cross rate.
Cross rate.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, I mean, I give you one data point, which I think is really different in this cycle. So in Europe, the ESMA, the European Markets Regulator, has started a pilot regime for traditional securities to be traded on a blockchain. And not just on any blockchain, but the regulators in major European countries are happy with this to be on like Ethereum, right? A public blockchain. And I think that's unthinkable a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be open and everything. It's still going to be fully regulated. It's going to be like, permissioned tokens and all this stuff. But the fact that regulators of traditional finance, of MiFID, of proper regulation are happy with this technology in Europe is, I think people don't fully understand what a shift that is.
Yeah.
And in the US, we're not there yet, but I think that's where things are going. And once this door is fully open, I think, yeah, we will see a different market.
I think as well, like that's why I've had this kind of bullish outlook on ETH, which has been wrong, I guess, today. And like Solana and all these other chains, like Love, I get it, but like kind of my core and macro guy, I keep things very simple. But to your point, like when people, Solana might be a better chain and what have you, and you know, but it's ETH that people are building stuff on. That's kind of been accepted. You know, you've had like
it's got that first mover advantage.
BlackRock issuing like funds on ETH. You've had some of the banks, like SocGen and stuff, issuing bonds and stuff on ETH. So now that might change. They might start looking at other chains, but it seems to be the chain that, and probably just first mover advantage, that even like the regulators and you know the big institutions are comfortable with.
And I think definitely from a TradFi point of view, the use cases you can explain on ETH are real and they make sense to people from TradFi. Bitcoin, to me, I don't really get the use case. I don't get the goal comparison, but I understand it's the poster child of crypto, and therefore I think it has a massive role to play, and it's going to lead the market. But to me, it's a lot easier to explain the use case of ETH and the application of it than anything else. And I think even
what are the use cases? Give me an example.
I mean, very simple case is just stablecoins. It's an absolute. I mean, even for me, like clients pay us in stablecoins. And it makes everything so much easier. And that's a real, I mean, that alone justifies ETH in my point of view, right? Just the fact, like instant settlement, 24/7, at low cost. I mean, if you settle US dollar in the US, it's still a nightmare, right? In reality, compared to instant atomic settlement, stuff like that. The fact that you could trade any asset atomically with instant settlement, I mean, those are use cases in ETH that you know, you can't even compare to.
When you say atomically, what do you mean trade?
So you can split up a stock in any
fractional.
You want, right? And I mean, just again, I don't want to pull it all into TradFi, but just the idea that you settle something near to instantaneously without any need for reconciliation for like T+2. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just it's such
removes
a game
so
changer
much friction.
for TradFi. So that idea itself, that might come over time, not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow, but over time. I think
that's the most simple use case ever.
And right? I'm a very simple guy. I'm German. What can I say? But to me, that is why long term this is gonna succeed. And you've got everything else on top. You know what I mean? Like this whole ecosystem. So my base case is rather bullish.
It will be interesting if people end up just trading shares and stuff on blockchain, like instant settlement. And that's where we're going.
But that's where it goes, isn't it? The better technology wins out in the end. Like, well, I'm sure in 10, 15 years time, we'll all look back and go, God, do you remember like you'd buy a stock and you had to wait like a couple of days for it to settle, and like that would just seem insane. Like, we're all moving that way. Who wins out, we don't know, but that's why we're all kind of just having exposure to this space, because once you see it and once you understand it, then it just makes sense.
Yeah, the options market's reacting quite interestingly, I would say, since the election.
Yeah.
So we had the usual vol reset that you always get after an event like that, right? So we saw a 20 vol point hit in the front end. And when we were talking last week on the episode, I think we shot on Thursday, market was hanging out at around 7,600. We'd had our vol reset. It looked like we were going to go back to kind of a 50 vol, realizing 40, nothing too crazy. And then at the weekend, we smashed through that 80K level. And I'd been saying to my subscribers, 80K on Bitcoin and 3,000 on ETH. If those two get taken out, vol pops, basically, right? That's exactly what happened. So we took those out at the weekend. We had the front end pop massively. Skew is interesting. We did see like quite elevated skew in the front end. In ETH, it got to 8 vols. Has started to fade. Bitcoin got to 4 vols in the front. That's faded to neutral as we hit 90K and then came back down. But I think the biggest takeaway for me and what I've seen in the vol surface this week is that Ethereum throughout most of this year has struggled to maintain a call premium above Bitcoin in the short end of the curve in the first week or month, basically, right? And any call premium that Ethereum had resided 6 to 12 months in the future, because people were like, it's in a horrible downtrend against Bitcoin. One day it's going to come alive, but we haven't got a clue when that is. So the only thing we're going to buy upside in is long dated stuff. Okay. That has completely changed. So the long end ETH premium has actually drifted very slightly relative to Bitcoin. Not crazy, but drifted. And the front end is now trading 4 vols over Bitcoin, which is the first time I've seen that in ages. And yeah, it's justified by the fact that we did rip about 20% more than Bitcoin initially after the election. We have faded a little bit. We've given about half of that back. But I just think that change in mindset about Ethereum and the kind of...
So for quite some time, the kind of narrative as written by the options market, if you like, was at some point ETH catches up and plays catch up, but we'll pump that out into the future.
Yeah.
Now the market's gone.
That point is now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now's ETH's time to shine.
I think that makes sense, right? Because Bitcoin is always the shining star of this, right? Because people, when they want to get in, it's the first thing they get in. And then once people look at what's behind there, I think ETH is the natural second one to look at. And I think ETH has quite a bit of catching up to do. We're way far away from all-time highs, and I think there's quite a bit of potential there.
Yeah, and like it was quite interesting. I think yesterday, the inflows into the ETH ETF was like 200 odd million. So it's the first time they've been decent. So that's quite interesting. So there's certainly a sentiment shift towards that. But again, it makes sense in terms of like Bitcoin was. So we had this really nice kind of macro narrative underpinning the whole crypto space. Bitcoin was the cleanest play. That was the one that the SEC and everyone was like, look, that's a commodity. We're fine with that. ETH and everything else was a little bit murky. Now, if we're going to go into this regulatory clarity or at least friendlier environment, all of a sudden DeFi comes alive. And then combined with that, you've got a rate cut and Fed cut rates again last week. They're going to do it again in December. So now we've got this kind of, and Bank of England cutting and ECB are cutting. So you've got this lower yield environment, and all of a sudden DeFi yields look more attractive at the same time when, you know, the regulators are going to be a little bit more friendly. It's just one of those nice, like we spoke about last week. It's a trade maybe, but it's just a nice confluence of factors that have gone just lined up perfectly.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, it doesn't even have to be a trade for like, if it's a trade for 3 months, we might find ETH double by then, right?
Yeah.
It's not out of the question. What do you make of the vol in ETH? Because you trade vol a bit as well,
yes. Right? Well, I think we still also have a way to go up higher in ETH vol. I mean, where are we now? Like 60 something in like...
Front end's like near 80 now, but like the more medium term stuff, yeah.
And where were we like, 3-4 years ago, right? We were like above 100, right, at times. Sure. And so I think there's quite a bit to go, especially again, if we go towards all-time highs. I think it's just natural that people there's a lot more, happening in it. Yeah, and I think also just generally the smile is going to increase. And I think skew on the upside is, so the call upside is there's quite a lot more to go as well, I think. I
mean, in the 2021, in the early 21 run up, right? I remember like you said, vols were in the 100 plus, and the call skew was insane. It was like 30, 40 vol points for calls, like in 25 delta risk reversals, right? That was nuts.
Now,
we are nowhere we're nowhere near that.
I think towards that we will,
but even if we get halfway towards that, that's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, Bitcoin, ETH vols trading about 10 vols, 8 to 10 vols in most of the curve. It's 15 vols in the weeklies, but whatever the weeklies, right? But so where do you see that going?
I think that's going to increase too. Again, looking at the last cycle,
so what sort of level?
I think we're going to go to like at least 20, if not more.
20 vols ETH over,
yes,
yeah?
Yes, I think
so. There's a good 10 vols to make there.
I think there is a good trade to make there. But again, and I'm terrible at this, it's all about timing, right? I think in the macro idea, I think I have a clear view about the exact timing. I think that's always another question.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I trade that spread a little bit, and I was actually short ETH vol and long Bitcoin vol before the election, and then it got to sub 5, and I covered it all. I covered all my ETH vol basically, right? And now it's at 10, but I wouldn't be a seller at 10. I mean, I was a seller at 10, but no longer. Yeah, now I think the move from 10 to 20 is actually more likely, especially the way ETH's moving and trading. Right?
And I think what's also, apart from just the vol surface, what's I think going to move a lot more is the basis as well. I think I think it's going to go itself go higher, but I think it's also going to move a lot more.
Why is that?
Just because as you have more volatility in the asset itself, I think the way people play with the basis.
So the flows, it drives more flows, and it really exaggerates the swings of the forward.
Exactly. On the long end, I think it really swings a lot more through.
Those funding rates have gone a bit nuts. They've all gone like above 20% now, right? Annualized, right?
Yeah, in the perpetuals.
Yeah, in the perps, yeah. But the actual basis hasn't like been ridiculous.
Not yet.
Yeah, like FR&T Financial, we kind of monitor compared to like the deck future, spot to the deck future. And I think that's trading now around, I want to say 15%, 16%.
Yeah.
And it's something like 3% above its like 30-day moving average.
Okay.
So again, nothing silly, like absolutely nothing silly at all. And in fact, I think that's one of the interesting things about this move, given the big move we've had. You know, if you look at those sort of metrics, like from basis and the leverage implied in that, even looking like we're saying about the vol markets, there's no signs of froth yet where you'd go, right, this market's overheating now. Like we maybe want to fade it. So I think that's really, really interesting. Yeah, like it feels very early sort of cycle type stuff. The only thing that worries me at the moment, and from a macro side, is the dollar, like that strength that's coming through, could start to squeeze things. Dollar CNH is popping up again, and I've had this view. If you've watched any of our past episodes, I think China want to always maintain this Vela stability, and they want to discourage capital outflows. So they're highly incentivized to try and keep a lid on Bitcoin. However,
they're not doing a very good job.
They're not. No, and I do think we've got this really powerful demand-supply dynamic now. Money's clearly coming in. People want to front run the potential that's going to become a reserve asset. So I think that's too powerful. But if there's one thing on the horizon that I'm like, that concerns me a little bit, I want to see the dollar just chill out a little bit. Yields have actually calmed down. We've seen the MOVE index, which is the index of Treasury bond volatility. That's come off a lot. So that's good, because that's good for liquidity, because higher bond vol means it's more, you need more collateral to borrow against and all that stuff. So so that's good. I think oil coming lower as well is quite interesting in all of this, and that should keep yields anchored. So I'm not overly worried, but the dollar's something I'm just keeping a bit of an eye on. If there's something that's going to spoil the party, that's one of the things I'd look at. But again,
I mean, the move has been pretty violent, right? In spot, I mean, we've gone from, before the election we were at 68k, and we hit 90k last night. I mean, that's a fast and furious move, right? And you know what we say about options give you altcoin-like returns?
Yes.
I mean, those calendar trades that we were talking about on this very show, a few weeks ago?
Yep.
And we were telling people, you know, the 8th of November is too expensive. You want to sell calls there. You want to buy calls end of November against it. Those things, if you had done, well, I did some, but like if you'd done those, you're looking at 5, 6, 7x on those, even if you traded it badly like me. If you sat on it and traded it and did nothing, you've probably made 15x, right?
Yeah,
Which is insane, right? So you've got altcoin-like returns on what is a 25% rally on Bitcoin if you know how to use options intelligently.
That's why you need to get onto Deribit.
Well, you need to get into Deribit, and why you need to come to Options Insight as well.
And I would argue that the first reaction from the election was mainly a spot reaction, right? Mainly a general, people now all of a sudden bullish, but they do it through spot trades. And I think now that the whole shift has been, okay, we're back on, I think this is going to translate more into like the future curves and stuff, because people are going to start doing that more. And I don't think we've seen that yet.
Start trading options more?
Yes, more options, more the term future curves. Because I don't think the first couple of days has been dominated by that. That's more a general, spot reaction, I think, so far.
You know, speaking about TradFi firms getting involved in crypto, well, once the IBIT options list in Q1, which is apparently when it's going to happen, that's another avenue, right, for people to trade, right?
Well, I think TradFi is, or segments of TradFi are longing for ways that they can actually do it, right? Because often there's limited access to things. You know, banks in the US aren't even allowed to hold coins and stuff like that. I think this is going to ease in this cycle too, and then I think that's another positive sign for the whole.
Yeah, which is why I think like MicroStrategy is so popular, right? Because it is providing that avenue.
Yeah, it's the proxy. It's the Bitcoin proxy.
And so the volumes on that are like insane.
Yeah.
So the more avenues there are for the TradFi guys to get involved and play this space in the way that they would other sort of traditional assets and products.
So anyway, lads, we've called it. We've had an explosive move. What now? What do people do now?
My view, I still think we're going to kind of beeline to 100k. I think things get stickier around 100k. So I think 100k comes in the next
few weeks. Next week.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's not far away now.
Yeah, I mean now it doesn't even seem brave to call that, right? So
yeah,
but like 100k, everyone loves round numbers. If anyone's,
do you think there'll be some profit taking there?
Yeah, I imagine that would be.
We have seen some profit taking in North calls, but actually we've seen a lot of rolling up. People have rolled stuff out to deck on higher strike.
Yeah,
people have bought call spreads, particularly in Ethereum in March in big size. So that there's still some pretty bullish tickets going up even at these higher levels. So, that's not. If we just saw profit taking and no replenishing of upside, that'd be a bit more bearish from a flow perspective, but we're not seeing that yet.
Yeah. And then just one other thing before you jump in with your thoughts. We've got the inflation number tomorrow, right? In the US. So by the time this comes out, the inflation number will be out. I do think that's important. Someone said to me yesterday, bore off with the macro, like, this is like degen time. But like if that was to be a bit, a bigger number, surprise on the upside, I think that causes some problems in the bond market that might just chill things out a bit. And certainly maybe in the alt space and this DeFi story we've been talking about, it might hit things a little bit. But I just feel the inflows and
momentum is
too strong.
Yeah,
I wouldn't fight that. Yeah, it just feels like we want to go to 100k now, and then we see where we're at once we get there.
Yeah, I think the underlying momentum is now just there. And there will be pullbacks and profit taking, and as you would expect. But I don't see any, the same way as before this election, everyone was waiting, but there wasn't any big, factors to shift the momentum. I think the momentum has now properly shifted. I currently don't see any big macro. I think it is macro factors that stop this momentum. So yeah, you'll have a lot more volatility. You have pullbacks, but I don't think that anyone would be surprised if it goes to 100. I don't even think a lot of people would be surprised if it goes to 150. I think that's all in the realm now. So I'm not saying I'm terrible at timing and everything, but I think the general momentum is there right now.
Okay, guys. Well, remember to like and subscribe so more people get the message, because we have been banging the drum about this move for many, many months. Hopefully you guys have benefited from it. Remember, nothing on this podcast is financial advice. We're just telling you what we're doing with our own little bits of PA money. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the show. Olaf, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Great having you on.
Thanks to have you on.
It's been great fun.
As always, a pleasure, Dave. And we'll catch you all next week.